Hello and welcome back to our Redeemer Lutheran Church Bible study on the book of Psalms. I'm Pastor Eric Kleinschmidt, coming to you after a 2-week break, and now we're ready to get back into our study, and we are discussing Psalms 19 and 20 this week. Again, I'll be using the English Standard Version, free version here online. You're welcome to follow along on the screen, or if you prefer to have your own hard copy in front of you. Again, any translation will most likely work. However, please note that some of the words may not quite match up because they are, of course, translations. All right, so let's get into Psalm 19. There we go. It's been 2 weeks since I've done this, so please bear with me as I relearn how to do all this. Psalm 19, we are told right at the beginning that it once again is a psalm of David, and it's to the choir master, so this was meant to be used within the context of worship. That's all we're given, just that it's from David and that it was meant and used in worship. So the first part really begins, the first 6 verses kind of form a little section, and then the next 4 or 5 verses, and then it kind of ends. So we're going to take the first 6 verses right here together. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the sky above proclaims his handiwork. Day to day pours out speech, and night to night reveals knowledge. There is no speech, nor are there words, whose voice is not heard. Their voice goes out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. In them he has set a tent for the sun, which comes out like a bridegroom leaving his chamber, and like a strong man runs its course with joy. Its rising is from the end of the heavens, and its circuit to the end of them, and there is nothing hidden from its heat. Kind of interesting how this begins with talking about the heavens and astronomy in that respect. In today's world, we often view astronomy as one of those sciences that is constantly at odds with the Christian faith, at least a Christian faith that believes in the truth of Genesis, that the world was created in 6 days along with the entire universe, and that everything that we see is roughly about 6,000 years old, which contradicts all the science that we have. And yet, we must remember that science is always an ever-growing and ever, for lack of a better term, evolving thing. To assume that we have everything figured out now is the height of arrogance. I'm sure that the Romans thought that they had everything figured out when they invented indoor plumbing and had all the finest homes in Rome equipped with running water. Of course, they did that with uninsulated lead pipe, and it led to widespread sickness and disease and death and poisoning and everything. We look back and say, well, how stupid could they have been? But now we have information that we didn't have before. The same thing happens with all of science. At one time, the greatest scientists in the world, told everybody that the world was flat and that if you sailed to the edge, you'd fall off. You know that. For a long time, but before Copernicus, you had the belief that everything revolved around the Earth, and in a way that isn't wrong. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But in terms of our solar system, we now know, at least we think we know for sure, that everything revolves around the sun. And when you say stuff like that to people, they think, oh, you backwards Christians, what do you mean that you think that the Earth revolves around the sun? Of course it does. Space is very vast, and we're learning new things all the time. And to think again that we have everything figured out is just as arrogant as past civilizations and past people thought that they had everything figured out, and they're proved to be wrong. So to believe now that we can't be wrong about anything, even things that we hold near and dear, just isn't a very healthy outlook to have. At least in my opinion. I do believe in the witness of the scriptures. I think that our dating methods and things like that are probably flawed. And if we were to peer into the creation of an eternal being, I don't expect really to be able to figure it out. And I don't expect it to operate on my terms. And I think we're discovering that about the universe, that as much as we learn there's a lot more to be found. I also believe that the universe shows us that there is a God, a mind, a creative force behind it. Verse 1 says that the sky above, the heavens declare the glory of God, and they are his handiwork. I'm not going to get into the aspect and intricacies of intelligent design or anything like that, but I do want to point out that one of the things for me that really changed my opinion from believing that somehow the biblical record was wrong and we evolved and there was a big bang, and because I did believe that at one time in my life, and now I don't, for many reasons, but one of them was something kind of odd, and it's probability. When you look into the mathematics, there's probably about 30 or so factors about our Earth that have to be exactly right, meaning that they can't be that much different than what they are, or life would be completely impossible. For instance, if you change the gravitational constant by just a few percentage points, either everything's in the universe is gonna coalesce into a solid mass, or it floats apart in a nebula and nothing coalesces, and therefore everything that we have would just not exist. It'd just be a cloud of matter. There's a lot of other things that the magnetic constant, magnetic fields, the distance of the Earth from the sun, the magnitude of the sun, that if you were to change the output of our sun just a little bit, we would either freeze to death or fry. So there's 30, astronomers estimate about 30 things that need to fall into what they call the Goldilocks zone in order for life as we understand it to exist. Now, that doesn't seem like a lot. However, the probability of those 30 factors, from the known possibilities that we have, of those factors being just right, is a 1 in 10 billion multiplied by itself 130 some odd times. It's very literally an astronomical number. It just, you can't write that number because it very literally is bigger than the universe. It has more zeros in it than there are particles in the known universe. So the probability of us being here is incredibly remote by chance, okay? Same thing with evolution. When we get to evolution, we need to have a certain number of mutations within the genetic code that come together in order to change one type of animal into another type of animal, okay? Atheists have done this math, and so it's not Christians that are, fudging the numbers to make it prove their point. But there are quite a few atheists and mathematicians that have actually done this work. And one of the most famous, I forget the guy's name, I want to say Alfred Huxley. I can't remember his name, don't quote me on that, but he estimated that the number of mutations that would be needed just to produce five beneficial mutations in a related area. Okay, so to change my hand from having 3 fingers into 5 fingers. Okay, let's just say that for the sake of argument would take 5 beneficial linked sequential genetic mutations in order to do that. Okay, and not for me to grow another hand or die or turn into goo. Okay, so just imagine for that. The probability of that, I wrote it down, was 1 in 10 to the 40th power. Okay, so that's 1 in 10 followed by 40 zeros. Okay, large number. Not as big as the probability for the Goldilocks zone, but still a very large number. He then later went on to say, just to guesstimate the number of mutations that you would need to evolve a horse. Okay, not as complex as a human being, but pretty complex, right? Would be, I wrote that one down too, 1 in 10 to the 300,000th power. I think I'm saying that right. So 10 followed by 300,000 zeros. To give you some perspective, the same scientists estimate that the number of atoms in the known universe is only 10 to the 80th power. Okay? So my non-believing friends will always tell you that impossible is not improbable. So while something may be improbable, it does not make it impossible. 1 in 10 to the 300,000th power is still possible, even if it's not probable. And then your statistician friends will tell you, yes, but there's also a threshold of statistical impossibility, and this is well beyond that. So they can continue to have that argument, I suppose. For me, what I see, I'm convinced. And that's what I believe. Well, that's why I believe what I believe and why I do what I do. You are free in this wonderful country of ours to make up your own mind. But look into the mathematics of it and the probability. And don't be afraid of astronomy and sciences, but realize their limitations. Realize the limitations of humanity. Put it in its proper place. And then if you do believe that God is real, he has to communicate to us. And if you believe that the Bible is the way that he does that, then we should take God at his word, even if it doesn't match up with what we think we know about the universe right now. So David is acknowledging the fact that the universe really displays the handiwork of God. And I identify that, and I totally believe that. Verse 2, day to day pours out speech, night to night reveals knowledge, that every day is full of new discoveries. And that's one of the beautiful things that I love about science, is that I believe that in learning about our world and the things around us, we learn more about our God who created it. As if studying the art of Marc Chagall would tell you a little bit something about him in his personality or his interests. The art often informs us about the artist. This verse 3 here in the Hebrew is very strange. It's difficult poetry to translate, because what we have here as there is no speech, nor are there words whose voice is not heard. We have a whole sentence there, but in Hebrew, it's really only like 3 or 4 words. It's literally, there's like no speech, no words, no hearing. That's what it says in the Hebrew, if you were to translate it completely literally. And so this is one of those cases where we have to take what the Hebrew says and then make it how we might say that in English. In order to do that, we have to have a good idea of what David was trying to say. And sometimes we do that better than others. But it is a difficult process. And this is, again, one of the reasons why you want your pastor to know Hebrew and Greek, or at least to have studied it at one point in his life, even if he can't translate on the fly these days, that he at least understands that, because it can leave a lot of room for interpretation. It's also important why you should have a good Bible translation, and your pastor who knows Hebrew and Greek would be a good person for you to ask about Bible translations if you're worried about that sort of thing. Okay? So, what it's basically saying is that there is no place where the universe does not witness to those who are in it, obviously. Anybody can look up in the night sky and see the handiwork of God. So when he talks about their voice, he's talking about the witness of the world around us. Their voice goes out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. In them he has set a tent for the sun, which comes out like a bridegroom leaving his chamber, and like a strong man runs its course with joy. So God actually creates the sun and creates the earth turning on its axis and revolution around that star. It's a G2 main sequence yellow dwarf star, in case you're interested. A fairly common star, at least in our estimation of the galaxy and of the universe. And yet God has set a place for it and has set the world in motion. And once he does that, even before he creates the stars and the planets and all of that, he talks about there being a day. So he orders everything by the rotation of the earth. And here we see that that their voice goes out to the ends of the world, and yet their words to the end of the world, earth, world. He's just talked about the heavens and everything and the witness of the whole universe, and David is now focused again on the earth and the world. In terms of astronomy, our earth is really in a pretty uninteresting arm of a pretty common spiral galaxy, a galaxy that doesn't seem to be all that different from many other galaxies that we feel that we can observe now. We just don't seem to be all that special. And so that's one of the reasons that drives this idea that things just happen by chance here. Because if we really were that important, why wouldn't God put the earth at the center and then build everything around it? That's kind of the way that we think. And again, that's us putting how we would do things on God, who did them for his own reasons and in his own way. Okay? But I would argue that throughout the Bible, God has a tendency to hide his most precious gifts in very humble and mundane circumstances. Look at Jesus, okay? Where is Jesus found? When he finally comes to earth, the promised Messiah that they've been waiting 4,000 years for, where is he found? The wise men go looking for him in Jerusalem. They figure the capital's got to be a great palace of Herod. He's got to be there, right? And he's not. Instead, he's in backwater Bethlehem, not even in the inn, not surrounded, by people oohing and ahhing, but with an ox and an ass. That's and his two parents who are like, okay, why are you people here? You've strange, visitors or shepherds. And later the wise men show up and like, who are these guys? Everybody misses it because God hides himself in the humble and in the mundane. David was the same way. When the prophet came to anoint the new king, he went through all of David's brothers first and then asked his dad, well, isn't there any left? And I said, oh, well, there's young David, but he's the youngest and he's out there keeping the sheep. He obviously is not a man of war. He's not kingly material. That was the greatest king that Israel ever had. So if we see that pattern, that God hides himself in the mundane and the simple, then why wouldn't he put his greatest treasure of humanity in a backwater arm of a fairly common spiral galaxy, orbiting around a fairly common yellow dwarf star? Makes perfect sense. And yet that place, this planet, this earth, this dirt, this Adamah in the Hebrew, which Adam is named after, is the center of God's world, the center of God's universe. It makes perfect sense to me, but that's me. You can make up your own mind, as always. Okay? So David, again, centers us on the world. And he talks about the sun, that God has set a course for the sun, and the sun at the dawn bursts out like a guy on his wedding morning, all dressed up, ready to go to the church, looking his best, just anticipating, exciting of what the day holds, glad that it's finally here. That's the way that the sun dawns, and it doesn't stop all day. It runs its course with joy, like a trained runner starts from start to finish, just chugging along across the sky. And now here's another interesting thing. We know that the sun doesn't move, right? That's actually the earth that's moving that causes the sun to go across our sky. The sun is moving because our galaxy is, of course, revolving around the galactic core, which then is revolving around maybe a universal core. We don't know. But from our perspective, the sun doesn't move. We're the ones who are moving. It's a heliocentric galaxy. That was Copernicus that really popularized that and brought that to light. God also knows that the sun doesn't move. Maybe David did or did not, I don't know. But God is writing through David. And so why does he talk about it this way? Again, because God's world is centered on what happens here. This is where people are. This is where they need to be redeemed. And so this is where God comes and is born, in this dirt, in that stable, in Bethlehem, where he is buried in that tomb after his crucifixion outside of Jerusalem. He is put into that Adoma, into that dirt, that terra firma, right here. No other place. And so that's why I don't believe that there's humans elsewhere in the galaxy, because Jesus was here. You could say, well, didn't Jesus then go to a different planet and die for them? Well, no, because Hebrews tells us that he died once for sin. It doesn't say that he died on every planet once for sin. Does that exclude the possibility of there being plant life or even perhaps animal life on a planet somewhere out there in the galaxy? I don't think so. But I don't believe that there's anything approaching human life. I don't think that there's a superior alien race out there, because, again, after God creates Adam and Eve, he rests, because that is the pinnacle of his creation, modeled after his own image. And I'm pretty confident about that. I probably will never know unless we discover aliens like tomorrow or next week or something, but I'm pretty confident about that. And I think it fits that we're the most important thing in God's world, and we're the most important thing in God's universe, and he gives us this vast universe to explore because he created us with a curiosity that is never ending. And so then it makes sense that the universe is constantly expanding if we believe what science tells us currently. At least that's a current thought. Okay. So God knows that the sun doesn't move, and yet he couches this in terms that people living on earth would understand, because we're the center of everything for God. Nothing is hidden from its heat. You certainly saw that today with the high temperatures. You know what it's talking about. Okay, so now when we reach verse 7, we have a shift from talking about creation now to the law of God. And again, remember that law means several different things. It can refer to God's commandments. It can refer to the first 5 books of Moses, okay, the Pentateuch. It can refer to all of God's word and the revelation of God. All of those are kind of in play here. So in this case, when we see the law of the Lord is perfect, reviving the soul, I read it as God's word is perfect, reviving the soul. The testimony of the Lord is sure, making wise the simple. The precepts of the Lord are right, rejoicing the heart. The commandment of the Lord is pure, enlightening the eyes. The fear of the Lord is clean, enduring forever. The rules of the Lord are true. Okay, this little section here, the law of the Lord is perfect. The rules of the Lord are true and righteous altogether. Those are kind of bookends. They have the same theme, the same structure. And then we have these couplets. The precepts of the Lord are right, rejoicing the heart. The commandment of the Lord is pure, enlightening the eyes. So very poetic language, and you see a little bit of David's skill as a lyricist here. And but he's talking about how God's word is what really matters. He's also talking about how living your life in a godly way has certain advantages. And he's right. Not killing your neighbor has certain advantages. Okay, not stealing from your neighbor has certain advantages. Because you won't be tried and put away and lose the reputation and all that sort of stuff. There is rewards in this life for doing things in a godly way. One of those that it kind of boggles people's minds is cohabitation. So we know that premarital sex and extramarital sex are not in God's design, that he desires that to be within the marriage bond only. And yet our culture has adopted this idea that it is okay and really beneficial for couples to live together before they get married, if they get married at all. And yet the science doesn't back that up. Instead, the science really pushes it the other way, that couples who cohabitate before marriage are much more likely to get divorced than couples that don't. And there's a lot of arguments as to what that actually is, but really most of the studies that I've read on it, they're really kind of boggled because it doesn't make sense. It makes sense that you should practice and see if you're compatible and get used to it and practice living together and before you actually tie the knot. That makes perfect sense to us. And yet it's not how God would have us do it. And so maybe that's why there's a detriment that we can't explain. And the real reason why it's detrimental is because it's not God's way. And again, you don't have to accept that explanation, but it's something to think about. And it's one of those places where maybe there is something to doing things God's way that has a little bit of a benefit in this life. It should be noted that we're not talking about being saved, as that's a gift from Christ. So our works here do not earn us salvation. But there are temporal benefits to doing things God's way, even if it doesn't seem that way. Okay? So that's what David's writing about. Verse 10, more to be desired are they than gold, even much fine gold. And David probably had a lot of gold at, maybe this point in his rule. This next couplet here, sweeter also than honey and drippings of the honeycomb. David was a shepherd. He probably harvested honey, so he knows what he's talking about. It's also interesting to note about honey is the one thing, the one food in the world that does not spoil, that it crusts over and things like that, but it does not actually go bad. And so when he couples that idea, that honey, with God's word, the word of the Lord endures forever, you kind of get that connection there. Kind of neat. Precious and everlasting is what David is saying in very poetic terms here. Moreover, by them is your servant warned, in keeping them there is great reward. So here we have that benefit to doing things God's way. And also there's also warning that God's word does both. It doesn't just bless, but it also gives warning. And this reminded me of 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 6. Such is our confidence we have through Christ toward God, not that we are sufficient in ourselves to claim anything as coming from us, but our sufficiency is from God, who has made us sufficient to be ministers of a new covenant, not of the letter, but of the Spirit. For the letter kills, but the Spirit gives life. God's word in other places is described as a sharp two-edged sword, that it both attacks and defends, that it kills and makes alive. And Lutherans understand it as law and gospel. That's how we characterize that. And yet it's just a biblical understanding that when God says, thou shalt not kill, okay, the commandment gives a warning that we're not supposed to do that. It also is a promise that, there are temporal benefits in not killing your neighbor. There are spiritual benefits in not killing your neighbor. So it does both of those sorts of things. So God's word really is a guide or a mirror for life. The guide is what we call the third use of the law. That the first use, if you remember from confirmation, is a curb. If the only reason we don't steal from our neighbor is because there's a commandment and God says, thou shalt not steal, and that stops us, that curbs us, God's law is doing what it's supposed to do. The second is a mirror. God's law says, thou shalt not steal. And we say, oh, well, sometimes I have in my life. So I guess I'm not the perfect Christian. I guess I really do need Jesus to atone for my sins. So it holds up a mirror to our life and shows us that we really need a Savior because we see ourselves clearly. And then the third use, either a guide or a ruler, depending on who your catechist was, who your pastor was that you had for catechism. Both of them mean the same thing. That if we're wondering, hey, what do I do as a Christian? How do I live my life? How do I make decisions? God's word gives us that guide, such as remember the Sabbath day, honor your father and mother, don't kill your neighbor, don't sleep with your neighbor that's not your spouse, all that sort of stuff. That's all together. So it gives us a guide as to kind of live our life. So all of that is there, and the word of God really is that guide, both in showing us what we should do and what we should not do. But the center of it is always showing us Jesus. Look what David writes here next, verse 12. For who can discern his errors? Declare me innocent from hidden faults. Again, David recognizes that he has committed sins that he may not even be aware of, and he's seeking God for help. He needs God's intervention because he can't even remember all the things that he's done. He doesn't even know all of them. He asks, then again, keep back your servant also from presumptuous sins. Let them not have dominion over me. David is confessing his weakness and his need for help, not just in a grand salvific way, but in terms of day-to-day sanctification, that doing the right thing, that help me, God, don't let me fall into pride and arrogance, help keep me humble. The reason David prays for it is because he knows he can't produce it in himself. So in his prayer and his asking, it's actually a great confession of faith and a confession of sins. There's so much that's bound up here in how David phrases these things, and just in asking. We don't pray to God for stuff we don't need. And so when we ask him to bring peace on earth and peace to our hearts and comfort our hearts and strengthen our faith and bring unity to the church and those sorts of things, we're acknowledging that we don't have those things. And we're also acknowledging that we have faith and belief that God can remedy them. We wouldn't ask him if we didn't believe that he is willing or able to help. So prayer is not just requesting of God, it's also a confession of faith in God as being the one who can help. And David does that right here. After David has been helped by the Lord, look what he says. Then, after the Lord has assisted me, then I shall be blameless and innocent of great transgression. David isn't denying that he has great transgression, but he's saying that with the Lord's redemption, he is freed from that. And then we have the preacher's prayer, verse 14. Let the words of my mouth and meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. It's a verse that many preachers will pray, sometimes from the pulpit, and many times when you see us kneel down there in quiet reflection, meditation time before we get up there, it's added there. It's part of mine. I have my own thing that changes a little bit here and there, but for the most part, I ask for the same things, and this is always part of it, because we don't want to get up there and just crack jokes and talk about our day. We want to proclaim Jesus, and we're acknowledging the fact that our words, apart from God's word, are meaningless. It's a clanging gong, a clanging cymbal. It doesn't mean anything, and it's just cacophony. But if we are proclaiming God's word, then it does not return void, but accomplishes that which the Lord sends for it. And so many preachers have this prayer as part of that before they step up there in the pulpit. I think that's a good thing. All right. So there we have Psalm 19. Again, David, some of his great phrases here and tough Hebrew. We're going to take a little bit of a commercial break just in case I discover that this isn't working and I got to re-record it. So I am going to go to commercial, and I will see you on the flip side in maybe about 30 seconds if everything goes right. All right. Okay, welcome back to our Bible study on Psalms. Now we're ready to start Psalm number 20, also a Psalm of David meant for the choir master. Psalm 20, again, we're not exactly sure why this was written. However, there is some good evidence that this was a psalm that was sung antiphonally, meaning in tandem. So one part of the congregation would sing one phrase or one verse, and then the other part would be sung by the other half. There is also, I think, some good speculation that this was actually a battle chant when David was mustering his army. You can almost hear some of that, like the cadences that the army guys chant when they're running, kind of in the same way. And we can kind of see some of that. It definitely has a militaristic tone to it, and so you might imagine David standing in front of his assembled armies and chariots and chanting this back and forth. So David shouts one part, and then all of his men respond with the other. That is kind of a unique image and possibility. I think it's a good possibility. So imagine David saying, "May the Lord answer you in the day of trouble. May the name of the God of Jacob protect you." And then have the whole army chant back, "May he send you help from the sanctuary and give you support from Zion." Right? A couple of things. Look what he says here. May the name of the God of Jacob protect you. Okay, so always remember that when we talk about name, a name is just not just a name in Old Testament. A name encompasses everything about a person. It is their entire essence and their entire hope, their entire history, their entire faithfulness. Everything is bound up in their name. And this, David is referencing a chapter from Genesis. So the name of the God of Jacob protect you. So to really understand that, we have to go to Genesis 32. So we're going to hop over there. This is where Jacob wrestles with God. So if you remember that Jacob is afraid of his brother Esau, right? And he's coming back to see him. He's not sure that this is really a good idea. All right. And that same night, he arose and took his 2 wives. Again, something that God didn't really want him to do, but he worked through it. 2 female servants, his 11 children, and he crossed the ford of the Jabbok, which is a river. He took them and sent them across the stream, everything else that he had, and Jacob was left alone. And a man wrestled with him until the breaking of the day. And anybody reading that without knowing what's going on, I think this is the strangest thing. Like some dude just walks past, sees you camping, and says, "Hey, dude, you want to wrestle until the morning?" I mean, that's kind of a strange occurrence, okay? When the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he touched his hip socket, and Jacob's hip was put out of joint as he wrestled with him. So here's some supernatural, wrestling technique. Okay, this isn't a euphemism for just saying that he slammed him to the ground and his hip popped. No, it actually says he touched him, and so it was just tap and so there. This is not normal. And still Jacob doesn't give up. Instead, the man says, "Let me go, for the day has broken." But Jacob said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." This is the first inclination we have that Jacob understands that this is not just some random dude, okay? Because why would he ask for a blessing from a stranger? And he said to him, "What is your name?" And he said, "Jacob." Then he said, "Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel." Okay, this is where Jacob is given the name change. "For you have striven with God and with men and have prevailed." So the man tells him, "You've striven with God and also with men." And Jacob could have been like, okay, what does he mean? Okay, yeah, I've had those moments where I haven't really liked what God has said or the situation he's put me in, but, or he could mean very literally. And that seems to be the case here, because Jacob then asks him, "Please tell me your name." Jacob wants to know the name of God. It's the same thing that Moses asks for, and God gives him that divine name, Yahweh, I am. Everything is bound up in that name. But God is not going to reveal that to Jacob. And so God says to him, "Why is it that you ask my name?" And there he blessed him. So Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, saying, "I have seen God face to face, and yet my life has been delivered." Jacob knew that he was wrestling with God. And the fun part is to say, okay, this God in this form obviously had a body. What did that body look like? And most answers you're going to get is it looked like the same body that they took down from the cross, because it was the same person. Yes, Jesus hasn't been incarnate yet, but we're trying to factor everything into our concept of linear time, and God exists outside of time, so he's not bound by those constraints, and that boggles our mind, and I'm not sure if we have that real figured out, and maybe we'll never will. But this is one of those cases where you have an angel of the Lord or a messenger of God that definitely really could be Jesus, the pre-incarnate Christ in this situation. That's why he won't tell him his name. It's like you'll figure it out. You got to wait till the New Testament, Jacob, and then you'll find out that name is Jesus. Okay, just kind of cool in that way. So David seems to be referencing this account back here. Oh, sorry, in Psalm 20, when he writes, "May the name of the God of Jacob protect you." So the great warrior, the God of our forefathers, protect you. Everything that he is in that name. Okay? May he send you help from the sanctuary, give you support from Zion. Again, Zion, the holy hill. We've discussed that at length, almost every psalm to this point. May he remember all your offerings and regard with favor your burnt offerings. Again, not because you've paid him off with these offerings, but because of the relationship that you've had with him, that he is your God and you are his people. And then Selah, rest. I think there's a good case for Selah just meaning a break. So after that rousing chant of David and his army, rest. And then, may he grant you your heart's desire and fulfill all your plans. And then the army shouts back, may we shout for joy over your salvation. In the name of our God, set up our banners. That is, after we've fought the battle and we've won, that we can put our banners up in place as we've captured their castle. May the Lord fulfill all your petitions. Petitionary prayer is something that we do at Redeemer. The prayer of the church is very much a petitionary prayer. At times it's also intercessory. Intercessory is when we pray on behalf of someone else. You're asking for their health, for their healing. Petitionary prayers are more general, where we're asking God to, bring peace to our world, for example. Okay, it kind of cross the lines in both cases, and there's specific formats for them, but most people don't know about that, and that's okay. But petitions of God, we're asking God for something, and we do that. And we wouldn't ask him again if we didn't think that he actually cared or that he wouldn't actually respond. So to pray to God is to really express our faith in him, in addition to ask him for help. And that's one of the reasons why we spend so much time in prayer at Redeemer. A lot of new people say, wow, man, you guys go on and on with those prayers sometimes. Yeah, we do, because we actually think God is listening and that he's going to answer. So we don't want to leave much out. David continues, now I know that the Lord saves his anointed. David is talking about himself there. He was anointed when he was made king. Again, that's set apart. Christ means anointed one, that Jesus is the one set apart to save. But the prophets, priests, and kings of Israel were also anointed in that case. They were foreshadowings of the Messiah, okay? And so when we talk about the threefold office of Jesus, being prophet, priest, and king, that we see those offices foreshadowing in the Old Testament, and David fulfills that office of king. That's one of the reasons why Jesus comes into Jerusalem the same way that David did. He will answer him from his holy heaven with the saving might of his right hand. Right hand is the powerful one. It's the hand of weapons for most men. Okay, yes, there were left-handed people back then, but just as in today, the left-handed people kind of get left out. Okay, everything is designed for right-handed people, and the majority of people are right-handed. So we talk about the things that we properly do or the things that we do best. We usually talk about right hand. Some trust in chariots and some in horses. That's an interesting statement to make. If this truly was a marching song for David and his armies. So here they are with all their chariots and their horses and all their armor clanking and their weapons high in the air as they're going, and they're chanting, some trust in chariots and some in horses. And then the other, battalion goes, but we trust in the name of the Lord our God. This is kind of a really unique imagery and possible use for this psalm, and reminds them that, yes, the battle isn't within our ability, it's within God's will. And that was a theme throughout the Old Testament, particularly after the Exodus, when Israel is coming to the land of Canaan, right? Think of Jericho, big walls. Oh, how are we gonna get past these big walls, right? And God says, okay, take the Ark of the Covenant and march it around 7 times and blow trumpets, the walls will fall down. And everybody that goes, yeah, sure, that'll happen. And God shows that that's exactly what does happen. And so David is reiterating that history here and reminding his soldiers that, yes, the real victory will be in God fighting for us. They collapse and fall, but we rise and stand upright. O Lord, save the king. May he answer us when we call. Again, imagine David standing before his assembled army and them all singing, O Lord, save the king. Answer us when we call. This last phrase, may he answer us when we call, is actually a bookend to back here. May the Lord answer you in the day of trouble. It's one of the ways that Hebrew poetry kind of tidies everything up, and not just Hebrew poetry. I do it as well. The vicars, I teach the vicars to do that sometimes when they're stuck. It's called bookending, where you say, man, I know that I'm done with my sermon. I just don't know how to close it out. I tell them, go back to the beginning. So look at how your introduction was and what point you made in your introduction, and then just reiterate them and back it out the same way that you came. And then that puts the two bookends there, and it's a technique that is common in writing that sums things up very nicely. And it's nothing new. It's been done for centuries. David is doing it here. May the Lord answer you in the day of trouble. There's also a structure within Greek. I'm not sure if it's in Hebrew. I don't remember. But in Greek, there's something called chiastic structure. And that's where you bookend not only the last parts, but then the second to the last parts, and then the third to last parts, and the fourth to last parts. And then you get down, and the most important part of the whole paragraph or the whole piece of writing is in the center. So it kind of like builds a pyramid in that way and puts the most important thing at the center. I don't think that this is a chiastic structure here. And I'm just not sure if it's in Hebrew at all. I do know it's in Greek because we had to study it. Let's see here. Some trust in chariots, they collapse and fall. So we would expect something about help from the sanctuary. Yeah, I don't really see it there. If it had something like the walls falling here, chariots, getting stuck or something, then we might be able to say there's a beginning of a chiastic structure, but it doesn't seem to be there. So sorry, you'll have to learn about chiasm some other time. But here we do have that bookending. May the Lord answer you, and may answer when we call. So that's Psalm 19 and 20. That's where we're going to stop for today. Again, I'm hoping to continue to do these videos to have them available for you on Wednesdays. I waited, it's Tuesday night here, and I waited for the storm to be over. Didn't want to go out halfway in between. Hopefully it all turned out. If you do enjoy these, please share them. Please remember to like and subscribe to our channel so that when one is posted, it will notify you. That also helps us come up in search engines and things like that. So that's helping us out if you like and subscribe to these videos. Just the way that YouTube works. If we didn't have to do that, it'd be great. But it just helps when people search Redeemer Lutheran Church Highland that it comes up rather than some other church in some other Highland, some other place. So God bless you. Continue to stay safe and enjoy the summer, what's left of it, and pretty soon we'll be looking at the leaves coming down. It's the way things go. So God's blessings to you all, and I will see you next week.